For our Fireside chat with Cisco Group CIO, Jacqueline Guichelaar, please welcome Miriam Hernandez-Kakol, High-Tech Board Member, Principal and Global Head of Management Consulting Practice, KPMG, LLC.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Fireside chat. I'm so thrilled to be here.
At this time, we ask that you rejoin our main live stream for the next few sessions. Please click on Livestream Main Session to return to the sessions. Our programming will continue there in a few moments.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Happy to have all of you with us this afternoon in this Fireside chat, which I'm really looking forward to. Jacqueline Guichelaar and I just met earlier this week for the first time, and we decided we could be fast friends. And I think that hold on to your seats because we're going to have a really direct and open conversation about her story and about what she does as a side hustle. But you have to stay tuned to that for a little bit later. So Jackie, welcome to High Tech. Welcome to our Fireside chat. So thrilled to have you here. And I can't wait till I travel out to the West Coast so we can meet in person.
I am very much looking forward to that. It could be a little dangerous, but you know what? I'm looking forward to it.
All right, Jackie, tell us a little bit about yourself. When we talked on Monday, you told me your story in a nutshell, and I was so moved by the fact that you and I have very similar stories, but yet different. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your story, where you're from, and then we'll get into other topics.
Sure. So, the easiest place to start is to share with everyone that I am a Latina kangaroo. And the reason why my family named me that is because I was born in Montevideo, Uruguay, hablo español. So I was born in Montevideo, Uruguay, spoke Spanish as my first language. My parents migrated to Australia when I was 2.5 years old. And let's say that, in 1974, a Latina going to Australia, that was give me 2 seconds. I don't know if you guys can hear that background noise. I'm trying to get it off. Can you hear it or not?
I can't.
You can. That's good. Perfect. Then I'll power on. So 1974, I'm 2.5 years old. My parents decide to go to Australia as immigrants. It was not the easiest first 10 to 15 years of my life. My parents were cleaners. We lived in a hostel for the first 6 months. They earned enough money as cleaners to rent a small apartment for a while. And I started school. So I started going to school at 4 or 5 years old. And I was the only Latina, or what looked like the only person who looked like me, amongst a sea of blonde girls. And so for the first 5 years of my life, I have to admit, it was difficult. I didn't feel like I had friends. I felt like I was different. In all honesty, I was bullied and discriminated against. And if I look back, and you and I talked about this a little bit, and I was reflecting on it, I think I was, quite a depressed young girl. And I always think about what got me out of that. But, I went through this, this period of my life where I just wasn't happy. I wasn't happy with myself. And it sort of got to, 15 years old. And I realized, I thought at the time that my brother was much smarter than I was because he'd get A's in English. I get C's in English. And on reflection, it was more because I was so scared about going to English class that I get picked on and everything else. But I was great at mathematics. So I remember saying to my parents when I was about 16 years old, because I was smart enough to know we didn't have money to send my brother and I to university. So I said to my parents, look, you send Daniel to university to study civil engineering, and I'm going to go to work. And they went, are you sure? And I said, yeah. He's smarter than me. I'm going to go and work. Oh, we'll be fine. And I was convinced that he would go to university, I would go to work, and we would be fine. And of course, 30 years later, here I am still in technology. My first job in technology was at 17 years old. I was a baby. I was running a mainframe system, not even knowing what that was. And that was the beginning of the next phase of my life. The first phase was not great But, I just came out of that somehow, but it was tough.
It's interesting because when I heard your story, I could relate to experiences of being an immigrant myself from Mexico to the United States and trying to read out loud in class and having all the kids in the class laugh at me.
That's it.
Right. And me being horrified and crying and telling my mother I was not going back to school.
Mm-hmm.
But it also made me think, given your success record and what you went on to do with your life.
And yours, by the way.
Today. I'm sorry?
And yours, by the way.
Well, thank you. Yes. It reminded me of what it was that we learned in those years. And I'm wondering if you learned the same thing I did. So tell me, how did you come out of that sort of depressed state? I don't want to go back to school. I'm going to go to work. I'm going to work hard. What was it that motivated you to then kind of snap out of it?
Yeah. Look, I think it was a combination of things. I'm not sure there's one thing I could point to, but I mean, my mother and my grandmother are very strong women, prominent figures, in my life. I mean, my mother had 3 jobs. When I finally got into corporate world, the first thing I wanted to do was buy an apartment for my mother so she never had to clean another toilet again. She's cleaned millions of them. And all I know is that my mother and father, my mom was a big presence in my life. She had 3 jobs. She never gave up. She was always fair to people. She always had her door open. There's all these, I know it sounds basic, but to me, it's fundamental. It doesn't matter if you come home crying, by the way, from school when I was 10 years old, like you, because they would laugh at me, or at work when I was 25 years old and I wasn't in the boys' clique in one of the tech companies. It doesn't matter when I was coming home crying, I would get up the next morning every single day and I'd go back into the office, no matter how hard it was. And there's this song, my other half laughs at this all the time, that Cher sings. I don't know if you know this one. It was on one of the movies that she did. And it talks about, she's been brought down to her knees. And it's at that point that you need to get yourself back up, because that's the moment that you will learn the most about yourself in life. And that is the moment that will make you the stronger as an individual, no matter how difficult it looks. So I think conviction, courage, never giving up, and the appetite to learn. I mean, I spent 8 years of my early parts of my career in IBM. I joined them when I was 21 years old and kept wondering why they hired me. But I tell you what I did in those 8 years. I was a sponge, una esponja. I was a sponge. Every course I could get my hands on, every meeting I was in, I was like listening, and absorbing, all of this information that a degree probably would have given me. But, as my mentor told me many 20 years after in my life, he said, Jackie, you don't need to do an MBA. You've learned everything you need in an MBA in your job. He said, so I wouldn't waste my time. He said, I just keep going because you love what you do and you're learning every day. But I think it's those things for me.
Yeah. Same, by the way, courage, determination.
Yeah.
Wanting to overcome and be stronger, and then, deliver for my mom. Really. Same thing. I always say that I stood on the shoulders of my mother, who also worked 3 jobs, by the way. We have too much in common.
I know. And we didn't even cover this last time.
I know. So let's talk a little bit about what you do now and your role as the CIO at Cisco. And what's been like the most interesting? I know you've been doing this for a couple of years, right? Had this role. So what's like the most interesting thing that you've done in those 2 years, and what have you learned from it?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, first of all, we both know Guillermo, right? G, amazing guy, ran an amazing organization, been at Cisco a hell of a long time, and I'm a big fan of his. And so, when you walk into a company like Cisco, who's been super successful, and 50 billion revenue, massive customers around the world, powering the network for medical, for governments, for financial banks, financial institutions, banking, etc. That's hard to walk into. And I think at the time, a couple of years ago, I think Chuck and the leadership team knew the company had to transform, but it's hard to figure out how do you take an organization that's been run so well and pivot the culture and the focus to do something else when they may not believe that that is necessary. But the reality is, the industry is changing, and customers want technology services and solutions. They want less hardware, they want easier integration, and they want technology that's easy for them to use. And that's a huge undertaking for us. But I think, the interesting thing for me was the culture of Cisco is just incredible. I mean, they've won #1 best place to work. But at the same time, it's sometimes so, on the one hand, you've got this amazing culture, and on the other hand, it's so hard to pivot this big organization into thinking that we have to do something different because that's what our customers want, and then translating that into technology. That's been a very interesting learning curve for me. And I'll tell you one more thing. At the age of 32, which was a long time ago for me now, it was my recent birthday a while ago. So let's say, more than 15 years ago, I was in charge of 2,000 German men.
I love this part of your story, by the way.
And you know what? It was one of the biggest challenges of my career at the time. This is in 2003. And these 2,000 German men were like, why is this Latina Australian from Australia who knows nothing about banking? What is she doing here leading us? And it took me 2 years, within a 2-year period, to convince them that I was bringing this strategy, this vision to the table, and that I respected their experience, but I wanted them to respect what I was bringing in terms of strategy, connection to the board, to what our customers wanted. And after a 2-year period, they started, after lots of crying in between and lots of, confrontational, because Germans are very direct, by the way. They are very direct. They tell you exactly what they think. I survived the 2 years, and we started turning it around, and actually I got the respect of them, and it was just amazing what we were able to do. We re-engineered, I think I told you, a payment system that processed 3 trillion euros per day. If we didn't get this migration right, we would have taken down the German stock exchange and the European stock exchange. So it worked, and I gained the respect, and it was one of the proudest moments of my career. And what I've learned, honestly, is that every time you walk into a company, it's not going to be the same. So I thought, coming into Cisco, 2 years, piece of cake, not piece of cake, but when people see what I want to do and understand that I'm here, because actually I'm all about the power of the team and the power of the outcome, less about me. I just think if you do that, it reflects back on you and you will succeed in your life. But it's been tougher than I thought, not because people don't want to do it, but because, being in California, depending on where you are in the world, and I think that's one of the strengths that I bring, you see different things, and sometimes you need to widen the purview of what the team is seeing to explain to them why it is we have to do what we have to do. So, but look, we're on our way. I feel like 2 years in, I'm part of the family at Cisco, and we're doing some great stuff. And I don't know if you know this, but my boss is also a Latina.
I do know that. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yes. Yeah. So, something that you said when you were talking about your early years and then connecting that to your German experience, do you think that there were lessons learned that shaped your leadership style? Lessons learned even when you were, 15, 14, 10 years old? We talked about the things that gave us courage to go beyond where we were, but what about your leadership style? What is that like? And is some of that tied back to what you experienced?
I think 100%, honestly. I think when you go through discrimination and when you go from a Latina, like from Montevideo all the way, and then you land in Sydney, Australia, and you're living in a hostel with people from Holland and China and Greece. I mean, that is just a completely different world. I mean, it's mind-boggling. I don't know how my parents did it. I will always be in awe of how you just pick up 2 young kids, move to a country where you speak 0 language. Like they just got on a plane not knowing where they were landing. And so I take my experiences from that the ugly, the bad and the ugly, and the good. And then I transport myself to Germany. So what did I see? When I started hiring people that I met in my career, an Australian, a Canadian, they made assumptions about the Germans. They would say, oh, they're very A and B. And I'd say, and I always say I see the positive in every culture. I see the positive in every person, not the negative. And they would say, yeah, well, they're a bit, whatever the word was. And I would say, no, they're very black and white. They're engineers, they're process people. I love it. So let's leverage that. Do they build relationships with the board and connect the business to the strategy, the technology? Maybe not, but that's what I'm going to do. And so what I learned from the early parts of my life with all those bad and good experiences was how, like, that connection of cultures and diversity of thought. I think that's one of the things that has made my career successful. So, yeah, I mean, look, you ask really good questions, by the way. You're on to something here.
Well, the thing is that similar to your experience, my mother, she wasn't single, but she left my father for lots of reasons we don't have to talk about.
Another thing in common.
Went on a train, a bus, and a car to go from Guadalajara, Mexico to Kansas City, Missouri. It might not seem as far as flying from Uruguay to Sydney, Australia, but trust me, culturally, it was night and day. Yep. I remember arriving in my Sunday best on a bus, on a Greyhound bus, saying to my mother, where are we going? But yet she had that thing that we had to get off the bus in our Sunday go to church clothes, right? Yep. And arriving in the Midwest, where even though there were Mexicans, no one spoke Spanish. It was like 4 generations back. And I remember the thing I learned from her that I didn't realize I was learning is that as she worked in a hospital and then a hotel as a housekeeper, that she built a very large group of friends. And that big tent is how she survived. To the day she passed, she was 94. She still spoke English with an incredible accent, Mexican accent.
God bless her soul.
But she made friends, and I grew up in a big tent. And I think it really, just similar to what you said, it impacted the way I viewed the world as I came up in business. And it taught me the same thing, that first of all, you don't succeed if you're only thinking about your own gifts that you bring to the table, and that none of us have all the gifts, and therefore we have to bring different gifts to the table for us to be successful. And really, it was only later, when I was already, maybe in my early 30s, that I realized, wow, I learned that from my mom, watching how she survived. For her, it was survival. So I think there are such lessons that we learn that are so critical and that shape what kind of leaders we become, right? Yeah. Not to mention the fact that we had strong women as mothers, which I think
my grandmother just turned 100 years old in December, and she survived what would have been a pretty bad scare of COVID. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
She was with my uncle at the time, and she tested negative. She survived 3 times cancer, 1 times potential COVID, and she's still going. She's still going. Incredible.
Speaking of COVID, so you came to Cisco right before, like 6 months before COVID? Yes. So I know you talked a little bit about all the great things that you came to do at Cisco. That must have been like, oh my goodness, like I wasn't planning on this one. What did you have to do differently? How did you adjust? Besides all the obvious, the remote working and all that, but for you, as you're getting to know this organization, as you're getting to understand how the lay of the land, what happens when COVID happens for you?
I mean, I'm taking a deep breath because it was difficult. I think a couple of things. One, California is an amazing place, right? Did I expect to be in California? If you said to me 4 years ago, "Oh, you're going to be in California," no, I would have gone, really? But look, the company, the opportunity, and I believe in the mission is one of the main reasons why I came here. And then, before we know it, we're working crazy hours trying to get 140,000 people working from home in 10 days and doing crazy, hours. And the team, honestly, the team were just incredible. The Cisco IT team, just incredible. I'm not the one that did the work. They did the work. But during that period, we were living in an apartment, and because we were traveling so much, we were always just going to live in an apartment. I've lived in an apartment in fact, I grew up in an apartment, tiny little apartment with me and my brother and his wife and the 2 babies. And so I'm used to having smaller places, but it really started to get to us because, we couldn't travel. One of the things that, we've always held as a high priority in our lives, me and my wife, Audrey, who's French, is our family. So I would be in Australia once or twice a year, or France, or Uruguay, or London. And because of the work, it's sort of, I made it work somehow. But then to have zero contact with family, not be able to get to them, I'm going to get teary now, for 18 months has been devastating. And so we made a decision. We're like, well, you know what? We're not traveling. So let's go find a house. And Audrey's like, well, where are we going to find a house? I said, leave it with me. I'll get the 3 best options. And she's like, that's crazy. I'm like, we're going. So we did. We're in a house. I've now converted, as you can see. I was in a tiny little shoebox before. And I thought, if we're going to do this for 2 years, we're not traveling. We're saving money on that. So, I turned the dining room into an office. And then, we've got the other office next door. And that really changed our life. And it's just the simple things, just being able to sit outside and just look up into the trees during meetings when the days are so long. Yes. Being able to sit in the sunshine while I'm talking to my mother and not be, and not everyone has the luxury I have, by the way. I know where I come from, so I remember that. And so whatever we can do to help people, we're always helping people. So I would say we've grown closer together as a family. We're dying to see our family. It's not been easy. I do a lot of charity work now. I'm involved in Covenant House, getting homeless children off the streets. I'm on the board of that. Like G, I'm involved in a lot of Latino, charities of different sorts, including, Latino Donor Collaborative, and now Cano Health, which is about getting every Latino in the United States of America, medical care, regardless of whether they can afford it or not. So I'm keeping myself busy, I guess, is the answer. We're more comfortable because we're in a house, keeping myself busy, and just, I don't even want to think about the day where I'm going to actually land in Sydney and hug my mother.
Oh, I know.
That's going to be, overdue.
So before we go back to talk a little bit about technology.
Don't ask me those questions again, please.
I want to go to your side hustle.
This is Shakira, by the way. Shakira.
Yes, hi Shakira.
Shakira, girl.
She's going to dance for us.
Yeah, no, she's not going to dance. What are you doing?
So,
yeah,
it's interesting. I had a dinner with a group of my team last night. It was the first dinner. We just at KPMG a little bit back said that we could gather in, and the rules have changed in New Jersey, so it was easier. So I had a dinner with 15 of my closest team members that live in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And we talked about the 3 things that were consistent across: spending more time with your family, wanting more adult conversation than just your significant other, and pets. Oh, there was a 4th one. How many bottles people are putting on the sidewalk to be picked up has increased.
Yes. Let's not talk about that one. Yeah.
Exactly. So I see your pet. So it makes we were all laughing that regardless of someone who was in their early 30s or someone like myself, we all had a similar experience during
that. It's the first time she's ever done that, by the way. So yeah, we also have 2 COVID cats, Shakira and Mateo.
Well, speaking of Shakira, I want to talk about your side hustle.
Okay,
which
here we go.
I found very interesting. Tell us a little bit about DJing and what's your favorite music?
So, look, I've been in technology now over 30 years. And I remember when people used to ask me, how did you pick technology? And I didn't want to tell them, or I didn't actually pick it. I went looking for a job at 17 and I landed in this amazing industry I knew little about. And I spent the last 30 years learning it. But when people say to me, like, Jackie, where is your heart? If you were going to pick one thing, and by the way, I don't do either of these things that well. I think one I do slightly well, the other one I'm not really good at. I love music and I love dancing. That's not a surprise if you're a Latina. And yeah, Shakira, I adore. Gloria Estefan, I adore. Mark Anthony, I mean, just to name a few, and then the more recent, Despacito, and any Latino music you can think of, I love it. And any music, period. So when I want to switch off from work, which sometimes is hard, I go to bed and it's hard to turn off. I'll either do a couple of things. I'll turn on the, sleeping music that you get on YouTube, the different 5, 12 hertz and things that help you relax. And actually, I usually fall asleep in 5 minutes. Or I cooking from my mother. You cook with love, and I love cooking and entertaining, or you dance, or you listen to music and you sing. And so one of the things, I always wanted to be a professional dancer, which I did do for a little period of time. And I can move my hips, I do okay, but I've never been a professional dancer. And then the other thing I always threatened to do was become a DJ. And so when COVID happened, I decided, Audrey said, okay, what do you want for Christmas? And my friends and family decided to chip in and buy me what you can see it over there. That's a DJ table. Which I always thought, I'm not going to get it because I'm too old. 10 years ago, I said I was too old to start DJing. And then I thought, I'm not too old. I'm going to start DJing it. So I've got 3 songs on there. I've been mixing it up a little bit. And Audrey keeps saying, can you please download some new songs? It's getting a bit boring. Download some new songs. But yeah, look, I love music. I love music. I like dance. And yeah, I mean, look, I'm never going to be a professional DJ, but it's fun. When you come over, I'm going to play you some Latino tunes. We'll have a glass of wine. We can do a little bit of dancing. Yeah. It's all for me. For me, it's all about experiences with people and memories. That's what I will take with me when I live this life.
Absolutely. So just getting back to leadership and really pushing up and pulling up are the next generation of leaders, which is something that we at High Tech. By the way, we're going to get you involved in High Tech. This is just like the beginning. Don't worry.
This is the taster. This is the little appetizer.
This is like the appetizer. There's a whole meal and dessert to follow. Don't worry. But good. When you think about pushing up and pulling up our next generation of leaders, especially young Latinx folks,
yes.
What advice do you give people that you mentor or people that you're advocating for, or even folks on this call? What type of advice? Because you and I agreed the other day that not everyone's story is the same. Not everyone faces the exact same situation. We're all unique. I was listening to a panel earlier on Pride Month, and that's very clear. We all have our own stories. We all bring something different to the table. So Shakira just wants to be in the picture.
Does I know this is the first time she's done that, but yeah. So what advice?
She's feeling needy. So what advice do you give up and coming leaders in tech?
I mean, I would say that you have to believe in yourself. I have always believed that I could learn. I've always believed that I'm a good soul. I've always believed I don't play politics. And I've always believed that if you keep it simple, I don't think you need to overcomplicate or think things too hard. I would say just keep learning and be open to any possibility. So, for example, when I finally made it, through 7 years of IBM, through different roles, and I became an account executive and a service delivery manager, I thought I had made it. I'm like, wow, I'm an executive at IBM. And my mum was proud, and my family was like, wow, you're an executive at IBM. And then I remember saying to my mother, you know what, I want to go and I want to do something else. And she said, what do you mean? You've achieved your dream. And I said, I want to go and do something else. And then this opportunity came up in Germany, in Frankfurt, in charge of 2,000 German men. And my mother said to me, what are you going to go and do in Germany? And I said, I have no idea. actually. I said, I wanted to go to the United States. I wanted to go to London, and I get a job offer in Frankfurt, Germany. So
From Sydney, you were in Sydney at the time.
I was in Sydney at the time, yeah.
Oh,
and my mother said, what are you going to go and do in Germany? And I'm like, there's this amazing opportunity. And I just saw this opportunity, honestly. And when they described it to me, it was exactly what I was looking for, just not in the country I was looking for, and not in the place I thought it would be. So my advice would be, just keep your mind open. Don't assume it has to look like this. I've always been a person that doesn't have boundaries. I don't label people. I don't put people in boxes, and I try really hard not to assume who someone is based on my first interaction. And I think the more you can be open-minded, the more you will be successful in your life. Keep learning, be open-minded, take risks, and be proud every moment of what you do. Because even when you make mistakes, you're learning.
Hold your head up high is what I tell people. When you make mistakes, it's not a bad thing. You just have to learn from them and keep your head up high. You know, it's interesting because I think risk-taking is a big part of when I talk to young people. I think about a lot of the risks that our parents took and that we're taking as part of a Latino culture that's, you know, broadly immigrant in the United States and other countries. And I think about this ethic of working hard. G and I were talking about this,
God. Yeah.
Right? So there's this ethic of you're going to take a risk. I mean, I just think, we came to the United States, but we came on a bus across the border with.
God bless you.
I think about people who are bringing their kids through deserts. This is a risk that people are willing to take for a better life and for safety. And then you think about the hard work ethic that we mostly grew up with.
100%.
And I think, but there's got to be a little bit to change the conversation, that you've got to be confident about the other gifts that you bring to the table, the other skills, the other talents beyond hard work. We all have that in our own unique way. Mm-hmm. So I think taking risks is so critical, but also having the confidence, like you say, to bring all of your talents, the whole you to the party.
Yeah, I agree. I think we all have a superpower. I think everyone has a superpower, but you know what? You're so right. When I started at IBM, 20 years old to 28, I used to go in at 5 a.m. I'm not saying I still do that now on occasion, 5 a.m. and finish at 8 p.m. It was crazy. The mentality being, if I work really hard and I learn everything I can, maybe someone's going to notice who I am. And I still work hard, but I'll tell you what I do now. I don't work on weekends if I don't have to, because I want to spend time with my family. I don't want to live to work. I want to work to live.
Yes,
right? Because we're only in this life once. I want to spend more time with you when you're out here, and one less hour doing email. So I'm totally with you. But I think it takes experience and the gaining of confidence in your ability to get to the point where you say, you know what? No, I'm not going to work on the weekend. And no, Maria, I can't. And by the way, she's great. Like what I found over time is when you do explain, and people understand. It's not as scary as you think. People understand when you say, hey, I can't work this weekend. I've got to be with, ABC. They do.
I think
mostly, not always, mostly.
Not always, but I do think having those non-negotiables in your life and having confidence that you can stick to those. I mean, there's always emergencies, but I think that whole idea of changing the conversation, it's not, our value is not just working hard. We have a lot more value.
Oh, totally. That. Exactly.
Although I bet you're the most prepared person in the room, especially when you're a room full of white males. No offense, but I find I'm usually the most prepared person in the room when that happens.
Yeah.
So,
very true. Very true.
So I think we're coming towards the end of our time together, Jackie. Anything else that you want to share about you, about your life? What's next?
I mean, look, for me, it's all about giving back. I think G knows Sol Trujillo. I've been involved in, more and more things around the Latino community and what I can do here in the United States of America. And you know what, Audrey and I feel like it's home here now for us, which is a big thing for us to say, because I don't even know where home is anymore, by the way. But I am so inspired at the Latino community here. It's incredible. I mean, the fact that I can just walk down the road and speak Spanish, do you know how rare that is for me? I didn't have that in London. I didn't have that in Germany. I didn't have that in Sydney. I had it for a couple of years when I lived in New York, but it's just so rare. And I think that I'm so proud of being a Latina. I'm a Latina first before I'm a kangaroo, even though I spent the majority of my life in Australia. I was 2 years old, remember, when I left Uruguay. I feel it in my blood, right? And Uruguay, for those, you probably remember, we were the first to win the World Cup soccer. And well, for 2 or 3 years, or 2 or 3 times, and then nothing since then, by the way. And Mexico's got a great team as well, by the way. Yeah, I think, what would I leave the group with? Look, thank you for having me. Believe it or not, I used to find it hard to do these kind of sessions and tell my story. And you know what makes me get the confidence to do it? Knowing that there are people out there who want to hear my story and that it will help one person. So exactly. I would just say, keep coming, keep asking questions, put yourself out there and share your story. And I'm always inspired when I hear people's stories as well. So thank you so much for having me. And by the way, it's been a pleasure, and I will see you in person, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Thank you so much. I think telling our stories and talking about the realities of work and life and our families is so critical, because we are integrated human beings, right? There's so many parts to us that we need in order to move forward and be happy. And you know what I always say, success is whatever you want it to be. People have different ambitions, and defining what that ambition, that objective is for yourself. Wow, that's happiness when you reach it, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So Jackie, thank you so much. I look forward to meeting you in person, and I hope everyone it's been a great day, a great conference, and I think we're going to go to a wrap up now. Thank you so much, everyone.